So in our dividend discount model, we're required to estimate a few parameters in order to figure out what the intrinsic value should be. One is a growth rate, and as discussed in the previous video, this can be reflected in the growth rate of the earnings, which sort of begats that idea of future potential dividend growth. But here, this is our required rate of return. So how do we determine what we're required to get for any given stock? Well, our CAPM model actually gives us a bit of information about that. Our capital asset pricing model tells us what return we should expect for any stock given its risk. So before we used to call this expected rate of return, now we're going to call it K, the required rate of return. And the CAPM, of course, said that the required rate of return was reflected in the risk-free rate and in the stock's beta. So we knew, for example, that the beta of the market was 1, and that we would have a K associated with the market at a beta of 1. So how do we do it then for our stock? Well, it's the exact same thing as before. We just take what the CAPM model tells us that we should get, and it says we should get something that's equal to at least the risk-free rate plus a proportion of the expected return of the market risk premium times the risk associated with our stock. This is the market risk premium. And then beta, I, is just the measure of risk of our stock. Let's take an example here then. If we have a stock whose beta we know is 0.7, what rate of return would investors require for it? Well, they would require a rate of return that gave them at least the risk-free rate plus 70% of what we could get for the market risk return, or the market risk premium. So if we knew that in our market, just holding a bundle of stocks reflective of the market, we could get 10%, what should we expect then for our stock? Well, for our stock then, and we need to throw in another parameter here. So our risk-free rate, we're just going to say it's 1%. When we estimate it then, we would say we need to get at least 1% plus the market risk premium, and we need to get 70% of that. So 1% times 9%, which is our market risk premium, which we're getting 70% of. So overall, in our model, we would estimate 7.3 would be our K. Taking this now to our model, when we're estimating this, we would say that the price of our stock, according to the DDM, D1 over K plus G, and we would take the K that we estimated using the CAPM and plug it in. Of course, to estimate this, what we're going to have to research is what the expected rate of return is for the market and what the current risk-free rate is in order to estimate what the proper required rate of return is going to be for our DDM model.